Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Laid Back Life podcast. We're talking about how to love life, entrepreneurship, and improve daily. Joining me today, somebody who walks the walk in so many wonderful ways. We've got Chris here. So, for those of you that don't know, I ask all my guests for their bio, and we have great guests. I'm very lucky from that standpoint. I've award-winning this and that, whatever. I want to read Chris's bio to you verbatim because it says so much about him. It's a quote from Dan Millman, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. When you sit, sit. When you stand, stand. Whatever you do, don't wobble. Once you make your choice, do it with all your spirit. And that's it for the bio. That's it. There's nothing else. There's nothing about being a great PI lawyer. There's nothing about Colorado Springs. There's nothing about all the travel and the other wonderful stuff you do. It's this. And if that doesn't speak to that quote as the way that you have embodied it, I don't know what. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I'm a huge fan of Dan's, but it's also a thing for me where it's always a work in progress, I think, of being present, but just going all into on the thing you want to do in the here and the now. And so it's a thing I really strive to be intentional on. I mean, especially with we know like the ups and downs of life. And so trying to find that constant it's a really good way to look at things.
Well, so last week I had Craig Goldenfarb on. Craig talked about like making time for who and what matters, and Craig really gave us this whole like how he screwed up at the beginning and had to learn over time about what truly matters. I'm curious for you, like when was living in the now? When was the being present? Like when did that first become a thing that you wanted to focus on?
Yeah, I think it's probably been more in the last like 5 to 10 years. After going through, so we had our kids really young. So a lot of that was just working and survival. And then switching jobs and doing things like that. And then ultimately the law school journey itself was a grind because I ended up doing my first year away from the family. So that alone was different too. So then as I've gotten into the business ownership side of it, the entrepreneurship side, and really started, I know you're a big reader. I can tell from behind you, but also your lists.
It's
And
fake. It's this
I
is
know,
this is green
there we
screen.
go. But I've seen your list as well, and it's one of those things too, where that I just became a voracious reader on, what I would call self-help or more like mindset books, things like that. And those are the pieces that ultimately got me into it. And then, so I did 75 Hard a couple years ago, which one of the protocols is you have to read 10 physical pages of a self-help book. So I read, who was it? I read The Slight Edge because he actually doesn't have, I could at the time couldn't find it on audio prior to it. And so, but he said that his favorite book of all time was actually Millman's Way of the Peaceful Warrior.
Ah, okay.
On my walks, I would listen to that. And I've probably listened to that and read it, 10 to 15 times, it's just got a bunch of different little quick hit parables in it. But for me, I think getting into the entrepreneur journey, the thing, in being present, the thing about it has been my mission and kind of goal and purpose and why in doing what I do is to change the family tree. And so in order to do that within, what we're doing each day, I've got to be present, and so I'm not always present, but I have to be intentional about the decisions that I make though, and surround myself with people that I trust to be able to do those things.
See, that's the what you finished that is exactly my reason. Like I realized in retrospect the things I did that were helpful versus the number of things I did that were damaging because I wasn't intentional about them. And the more I got intentional, the better everything turned out. And then being present helped me be more intentional.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and isn't I was thinking the other day too, because I think it's Hormozy who was talking about the thing too on because I think all of us are a little bit of we all like control in some ways, but he's like, if you really want to level up your life and get the things you want, you actually have to start letting go of control and giving it over to your team. And then the moment you do that, just watch yourself skyrocket. And so it's that kind of an idea as well. And so my present these days are, we just had my ops manager just had a baby, so she's out for the next 12 weeks. So I'm taking over her check-ins, her 15-minute check-ins with the team. And it's been fascinating. And those are some of the best parts of my day right now is actually being present with them just to check in and see what they've done well in the last week, and then, see what things I can do to help and how I can assist them. So that's kind of my role at this point.
Well, and it's wild to me, like those moments, the 15-minute check-ins, like that's the ultimate business leverage point because 15 minutes with them, you can get their other 40 hours so much better.
Mhm.
But also, like, as humans, we're social animals. And I think, especially like nothing will pull your presence more than the phone.
Oh,
We have
absolutely.
access to so many things. So, like having those one-on-one check-ins, whether they're virtual or in person, like you're also spending more time with humans focused in the one-on-one section, and I get just so much joy out of that.
Yeah, and I think it's been the thing after I tell the team all the time that ultimately we're just humans who help other humans. But even for me and my leadership team is what we are with our team members now. We're humans helping other humans. It's really what we do day in and day out if we just boil it down to the rare, the bare necessity of it all. And that's who I think we are. It's just we're just people, you know.
We'll see. I always joke my internal meetings, my coaching clients, and my lunches with friends are basically the same conversation in three
Yeah.
different aspects, but it's ultimately the same thing. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah, don't you think too, as you get a little older, I remember some people talk about like all the different hats that we have to wear, right? Here I am as a dad, here I am as a husband, here I am as this. But kind of that idea is actually we just keep the same hat on, because I'm tired of trying to change, back in the day when I was younger, it'd be like I would want to put this hat on here to try to impress X or do, things like that. So these days not as much.
Well, for me, it was the suit. It
Yeah.
was the
Oh,
getting dressed up, not the hat, but literally the outfit. And now I'm like, if I'm happy,
yes.
I'm gonna show up better and
I,
impact things more.
I had to wear one last week because I was in a trial with Megan, and it's because I always want two at the table, but it was a cool experience because I got to do that with my daughter. But ultimately, at the moment it hit 5 o'clock, like the tie was off. Like this is literally the out, and so it just yeah, I cannot stand the suit.
So I, here's how I want to, I'm going to say start this conversation, continue this
Yeah.
conversation. What does being truly present in the moment mean?
Yeah. So I think it's this idea of one of the things that Millman talks about, and I've noticed it in certain conversations I've had with people. So like even here right now with you, is he said if you're truly present. So right now, this conversation with you, Jordan, it's the most important thing I've ever done in my life. So if you think about every moment that you have, and they're all different experiences, we give everything different weight. He's like, but truly, in this moment right now, it is the most important thing that I'm doing because it is the only thing that you're doing is having this conversation with you. So I think if you look at being present that way, I'm saying it's the most important thing because it's the only thing you're doing right now. Because even if in my head I'm thinking about other things right now, it doesn't matter because here right now, this is the thing that's happening. So I like that viewpoint on it. There was a moment too when we took a trip to Europe a couple of years ago, and we were going up one of those long escalators coming up through Paris, and I remember looking on the other side, and you get these like slow down moments almost in life. I think when you're present, kind of observing others, and you just see like the pure joy. I was able to watch like a couple, holding hands for a minute, and a family with their little kid coming down the escalator, and just how excited she was. And there's just great joy, I think, that you can find in that piece of it. So that's my take on it.
It's so interesting. Well, what you said, I also love from the standpoint of I think all of us bite off more than we can chew. And
Mhm.
so, like, if you can't rationalize this event, this case, this whatever
Yeah,
as the most important thing, like, let that empower you to say no instead of half-assing it in the moment. Like, just cut it
yeah,
out, knowing that you can focus on what else happens then.
yeah. No, and I think it's what was it like years ago? It was James Altucher has the book. I think it's The Power of No, and talking about how important saying no is. We all talk about like getting to yes or whatever it may be, but I think saying no and actually, you know, weeding things out because a lot of us want to be pleasers, but ultimately that can be harmful in some ways too because it does take away from those moments in life where you can really find joy and less distraction ultimately.
Do you Well, I guess what's the benefit that you see? Like, let's dive into this. Like the ability to say no to more things, the ability to focus on the moment. Like, how has that had a positive impact in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big benefit is that generally I don't do things I don't want to do. You know what I mean? And it's the idea. We were talking to one of our kids recently too, where like they're like, yeah, I don't really want to go to this event, but da 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 da. And I'm a big believer that anything before the but probably doesn't matter because it's the stuff after the but that you're actually thinking about. And so she's like, and given all the reasons why she should go. And I'm like, well, look, at now at I mean, I'll turn 50 this year. So at almost 50, it's like, if I don't want to go, I'm just not going to do it. Now, there are a lot of times when Gretchen and I do end up going to something, and at first we're hemming and hawing a little bit about should we do it, should we not? And we go and we look back after going that we have actually really enjoyed the experience. So I do think sometimes getting out of your comfort zone can be a good benefit of that. And, and doing things. I mean, there's probably only a few people where I'll do the things because they tell me to do them, which is, it's my wife and the kids, but that's kind of about it. And so I think the benefit though, in that sense, is you realize what is important and who is important to within your purview, right? And within your circles. And I think it really starts it shapes or reshapes your vision and your goals a bit too. So it does change things a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, so from the standpoint of like, I think it was John Mulaney has the joke like canceling plans is like crack for adults,
Yeah.
which was
Yeah.
less funny after he went into rehab,
Right.
but it's still funny.
Yes.
Um, but you end up like in the ideal situation, you have planning you in the moment, coming up with like, hey, in 3 weeks we're going to this and enjoying it. You have you looking forward to it during it. Then you have like that existential dread that day where you're like, are we really going to this? But then I think I agree with you. Like a lot of times you have a ton of fun in the moment and then you can reminisce about it afterwards. And so like there's really only one out of five of yous that
Yes.
hate this, and the other four seem to enjoy doing things.
I feel like we're either getting into like a multiverse or a severance world right now, then that's like hitting on the different versions of ourselves
Yes.
we're trying to do, you know what I mean? Different things. So,
But it is. And and it's weird to me the the fact that we have all of recorded human history at our touch from the phone, from YouTube, from whatever is really great until it's the overwhelming thing of, just imagine somebody like in the 1950s growing up in a mid-sized city and it was like there's one play in town. There's one
yeah.
movie that's showing. Like now it's like, well, do I do this? Do I do that? Do I connect with these people? Go here. Do I,
Yeah.
there's so many options that it makes it a lot
Mhm.
harder to be present in the moment, I think.
Yeah. And I was talking to a realtor friend once too, and he was telling me as we were both going through certain changes, and he's like, look, he's like, the thing is, he's like, I like boring and peace. He's like, when I get home, I just want it to be peaceful. And a lot of it is the push for that. And what is it, the Money Wise podcast with Sam Parr, where he talks to 100 millionaires and billionaires about their journey and what they spend their money on and what they do. Most of them, or a lot of them, have really like they start really high with the big spend and that what they thought they wanted, but then ultimately they come back down and they're like, yeah, my day-to-day life it's pretty boring. And you look at some of these guys and you're just like, holy cow, you would assume that they're just out jet setting and doing all this stuff, but a lot of them just have these fairly boring, simple lives.
I mean, Warren Buffett's going on
I know, right?
what 50, 60 years of the same
Yeah,
house and
yeah,
says like I like living in Omaha because I can read 12 hours a
right,
day and not feel like I'm
right.
missing stuff. Like
Yeah, yeah. And so I think it's fascinating.
which but then like at the same time, then my problem, I like hustle culture is louder than not hustle culture.
Yeah,
And it's interesting to me that like there needs to be more people like us sharing the going slow and like these 100 millionaires sharing the going slower. Like I want to get on LinkedIn and see a whole conversation about that instead of the like, oh, productivity hack of the day. If you only write okay instead of OKAY in your emails, you can send 17 more emails a day. And
right, right. Yeah. And it's that idea too, right? Of like, how do we like intentionally force ourselves to slow down? I mean, I tell the team all the time, the greatest thing about being your own boss is you have nobody to tell you what to do. But the worst thing about being your own boss is you have nobody to tell you what to do. And so you need to set up governors for yourself as an entrepreneur. to help protect you from you. Um, because generally I find it doesn't need to be necessarily about the hustle. Because I think the hustle culture may be filling a need or a void. It's similar. I view a lot of things like that, like high school, basically. And maybe it's more like high school hustle culture where it's like just trying to fit in at the cool kids table or trying to still find that spot where you want to fit, where you think from a societal step up that you need to be. But it's once you get to a spot where you're comfortable in your own skin, I think a lot of that can shut off and go away.
Maybe. I hope so.
I hope
It's
so.
like, I mean, you read like all these memoirs, like Shoe
Yeah.
Dog from Phil Knight
Yeah.
and
Uh-huh.
even the stuff from Elon, and they're just like, if people knew what I went through, they wouldn't be me, or what I would give to have one more day with my son who died in the scuba diving accident, like
Oh
Phil
yeah.
Knight's kid and whatever.
Yeah.
And yet, like you go online and it's like work 16. It's not what you do from 9 to 5. It's what you do from 5 to 9. Work
Yes.
16
No, and
hours a
I've
week and
yes, because I have yeah, and I mean I've heard some of them say too that thing of like if you think you work that much, you can work from your 9 to 5, but then you've also got the 5 to 9 where you can basically now create your side hustle or do this other stuff. Um, I don't know. I think I'm somebody too that probably just says you got to find some balance in a sense too. I mean, I'm a believer too that work is that name for a reason. If it was called fun, I'd be playing PlayStation all day and getting paid to do it. And so it's one of those different things. I mean, work is still a job, like it's still work. You try to set it up, but you set it up to establish a thing you want. For me, it's to help establish a lifestyle that I want to have ultimately. Like work
so
is solely there to establish a lifestyle.
I mean, I agree with that, but then also I think like too many small business owners get caught up in not just the doing everything, but the belief that they have to follow somebody else's plan. Like just working 9 to 5. Whoever said we had to work 9 to 5 since like the factory that had 3 shifts and
Yeah,
that was one of them. And yet like we get caught up in this weird concept as opposed to like working 9 to 12 and then
right.
4 to 7 and like whatever.
Yeah,
It's wild to me. Like you can build the life that you want, but you can also change the work to make that closer to what you want as well. Like you doing, the
yeah,
check-ins for the next 12 weeks. Like that's a
yeah.
cool thing to do.
Well, and I don't, I mean, and you've been in plenty of masterminds too, is I think that a lot of people, a lot of those small business owners, I think they really lack their own vision. It's probably been the key piece that I've seen
Hmm.
over anything else. So that catalyst and what they're doing then in some ways, and you have to start somewhere, they're kind of attaching onto somebody else's vision in a sense, because I still don't have my own vision formulated. And so I've seen that a lot in recent events that I've been to. And it's just, I think that's probably one of the biggest things that keeps people from being able to truly figure out, because they haven't answered that question of what do you want? Like, what do they actually want out of this? They haven't defined it. It could be a thing of like, well, I left my old job because I didn't want to work for the man anymore. And so now I'm doing my own thing. But what does that mean? What does it look like? What do you actually want out of it? And those are some deeper things you've actually got to spend time with yourself on to figure out.
So I'm gonna use that as a good. So this when everybody's watching this, it's May. So we just launched the Luau. It's our group online community geared for that. Like, we talk about work-life balance, but we don't spend the time and energy on the life balance. And so having more of these conversations in a community of exactly what Chris is talking about here to help people see not just the what other people are doing, but why or how they figured it out or how they created this system for themselves to utilize that framework instead of just like I want to be the next John Morgan, let me do exactly what he did instead of things that make sense to me. So yeah, thank you for highlighting that. I agree that that's a big issue. For me, I see it in the hey, what's everybody else doing for marketing that works? And I'm
Sure.
like, that's not the right question. The question is who's trying to get in front of the right person? Who's got the right size structure? Who's got the same pricing model? Like if you
Yep.
match those things,
Yeah.
then the marketing takes care of itself. But too often
Right.
we try to jump on one factor of it instead of like looking at the impact. Like what's the ultimate goal of all this?
Yeah, and again, the goal too, or maybe it's a question too, not only within the business itself, but also how do those decisions you're making trickle out into the life that you want? Like you were saying, it's a two-prong approach. And so even if with whatever decisions you're making right here within the business, are they actually helping give you or lead you to that life that you want to have, or at least that you say you want to have? Because I think it's this thing where it was a couple years ago where I bought a mandolin because I wanted to learn how to play the mandolin, right? Because I love Chris Thiele from Nickel Creek. He's a phenomenal mandolin player. He's been playing forever. And so I do not know how to read music. I've never played an instrument. I was like, this is, let's try a thing out.
This is a place to start.
Yeah. And so I took a couple lessons, and then after that, I was done. So I have a mandolin sitting in my, office that never moves. But it's the thing of the idea versus the reality, right? So in our visions, we have this idea, and there's a great pod I think it was Ali Abdal does with this poker player. His name's Chris Sparks, I think it is, where he talks about experimenting. And he's like, you need to, instead of just going all in on X, just do little experiments. So like if you, Jordan, said, hey, I want to move to Bozeman, Montana, and you all say, well, we're just going to buy the house. Well, we don't just do that. He's like, go rent an Airbnb for a week in the area that you want to live. Go to the grocery store, integrate yourself there for a minute, try it. But it's the idea versus the reality, because it's that thing of like with our visions, we have these ideas of what we want, what we think we want. But then sometimes once we get to the reality, it just doesn't actually match up the way we want. And so maybe little experiments or little things to help us realize, does our vision need to change? Do we need to actually shift and move a little bit? I don't know.
Well, it's one of the Jim Collins books talks about, firing the bullets and not the cannonballs. You've only got so many to
Yeah.
send out. Honestly, the most common piece of advice that I give people is go watch the movie Soul and
Oh,
just
yeah.
see like all the things that give souls a spark. Like what of
Yeah.
those seem interesting to you when you're looking for
Yeah.
a hobby, when you're looking for, some personal time,
Yeah.
like watch the movie and just write down anything in that movie that
Hmm.
seems like it might be of interest.
Nice.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Like I love the way that you're trying to frame this around like what's the outcome that you're looking for? What's the end goal of all this? Like
Hmm.
how did you find your own end goal?
Again, I think it was experimenting. I don't ever want to stop working in some form or another. And again, I view myself as working only, at that point down the road, it'll be like 10 to 15 hours a week, in my ideal vision. But as I walk through my vision, and it's, some of it is we've got our place here, our kids, one of our kids is up in Denver, the other one's down here. Just found out that the one down here in the Springs, she's pregnant, so she's due in September.
Hey,
So it's
congrats.
crazy awesome. And then, but I want a townhome off of a golf course that I can, with a pool somewhere else, not here, somewhere a little warmer, dry warmer. And so to have that, I would like to travel, you know, three, three or four times a year, to Europe and overseas. And it's just those kind of simple things. I want another dog, but my wife doesn't really want one. So I don't know if that really fits into the vision. Again, it's the idea versus the reality, but kind of getting to it, I think it takes some work and really figuring it out. Like I've gone to Scottsdale a lot. That's probably the place. That's what I have on my vision right now. And because it's a short flight from here down, from the Springs down to Scottsdale. And so again, it's nothing crazy. But for me, it gives me a sense of like peace in that sense of the ability to work out for a bit in the morning, go do some work, do some check-ins with the team, make sure that they're all good and set up, go out and golf for a little bit, and then come back and do stuff like that, and then have intentionally planned. It's like Jesse Itzler talks about with the big ass calendar is the a quarterly planned trip, per stuff too with the family or with Gretchen. So yeah, I think that's it, honestly.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's it. That's a
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
the more vivid that picture, the easier
Right.
it is to live the moments to get to that,
Yeah.
right? So, okay,
Yeah.
if I to be able to work 10 or 15 hours a week in that time frame, to be able to have the thing, to know, to go down to Scottsdale, know that that's the close area
Yeah.
that seems right.
Yeah.
I always tell people like when in doubt, write your obituary because you will
Yeah.
realize how many things are meaningless if they don't make that list.
Yeah. There's a great obit that's read by who is it, Jeremy Piven and Serendipity, where he reads because he's an obit writer in that movie with John Cusack. and he basically reads Cusack's obituary because he's just like floundering his life away or doing something stupid.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
it.
I mean, Alfred Nobel, like the Nobel Peace Prize exists because
Yeah.
Alfred Nobel's brother died and they thought it was him and they put the Merchant of Death,
Yeah.
dynamite, etc. And he's like, I don't want that to be my obituary.
Right.
So this
Right.
guy put together like, a fund
Mhm.
to put this Peace Prize so that his obituary wasn't like dynamite and I killed a bunch of people from it.
Yeah. 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 It's fascinating.
It's a wild wake-up call. And
Right.
then,
Oh,
you
absolutely.
you work you backtrack into the moments to get to what that
Hmm.
looks like.
Yeah. Yeah.
On so I think that was a good conversation of the macro. I want to go micro. Like, I mean, you've got some tattoos that help you fo on the day-to-day living in the moment. Do you have mantras? Do you have exercises you go through? Like, what's the day-to-day look like to stay as grounded as possible in the now?
Yeah. So, like I said, I just recently got a couple of tattoos from Millman's book. Have a couple of others, but so the tattoos I have are what time is it? And the answer is now, and where are you? And the answer is here. But like the mantras or the stuff, so I'm big into physical activity. I think it's important. And so getting up and going to the gym in the morning is something that I do. I'll have time in the morning to myself, to where I can do some cardio, do some weights, listen to podcasts or do other things. But that kind of gets me just in the zone because, I mean, and here's the thing, Jordan, like, probably just as well as anybody else. I mean, up here, my brain is always thinking about, the business and other stuff and things like that. And so it doesn't really shut off in a lot of ways, but you do have to quiet it. And the way that I quiet it, I think, is through the workouts. It's also through just having sometimes the greatest, present moments that we have are my wife and I sitting down watching, Food Network's Tournament of Champions or something on a Sunday or what have you, just because it's something that we both enjoy and you're able to do it. From a mantra standpoint, it's just, primarily that stuff from Millman. I'd also recommend the Be Water, My Friend by Shannon Lee, which is her memoir to Bruce Lee. It's a great read. Some similar stuff in there as well. And then who was it? Tyson introduced me to the Mindset app years ago that I listen to at the gym all the time. And there's some great talks on there that they've compiled with some music behind it or what have you. And so those things really help get me charged. Now, from a bigger, instead of a day-to-day piece, a bigger one-off, I think it was about a year ago, I did the 12-hour walk, which is Colin O'Brady's book, but it's a thing that you can do that anybody can do, which really helps you focus with just yourself. It's you for 12 hours just walking without any electronics or anything else at all. So it's you with just you. And so no pets, no other people, just you. And so sometimes that's the scariest thing because of all the people we probably don't want to spend a lot of time with is ourselves. And so,
Ain't that the truth?
that's why we have all the distractions and everything else, right? So as a bigger piece, that can always be a thing where I think it was, I got introduced to that from Martell, and Martell was like, he said he does it at least once a year. And so and Colin's like, look, it can be right around your block. He's like, I had an 85-year-old lady do the 12-hour walk. She went around her block, 8 times or something, so nothing crazy. It's not a contest of length, or it's not a physical contest. It's a contest for being up here because it helps you deal with a lot of your own mindset issues. And it forces you to be present with yourself for that period of time. It really does. It's a fascinating piece. But yeah, on the day to day, it's more, I'd say the physical activity, being intentional. I think your calendar reflects a lot of like I said, with the 15-minute check-ins with the team on who I've got to be with at what point in time. And so being intentional about those pieces as well. And so, especially too, as we're kind of trying to move, as we're moving through the day with certain, work pieces that we have to do and things like that, that's another way too to help out.
I want to, well, I guess it's funny. You said it's not a distance thing, but in your 12-hour walk, how far did you go?
Oh, I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it was like 10, maybe at least 10 miles.
Okay.
The problem I had is I started with flat-footed shoes, like because I generally will just wear those around. And I ended up getting really on the top of my feet, ended up getting some really bad like stretch pains or something like that. It almost felt like side stitches from when you run.
Yeah.
Ended up getting that. So then I switched over to a like more of like a Hoka after, which is probably what I should have worn the whole time. Just something with a lot more padding. And so that slowed me down. Like at the end, my pacing was really, really slow. Um, I
But
also
just imagine, like I did
yeah,
a marathon in like just under 6 hours.
oh
Obviously, I don't expect
yeah,
to do
yeah,
50 miles in,
right,
but like
right. No,
that was a lot. And this is
yes.
twice that time.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's and again, it's he's like you do it. You can have yourself set up, for moments to pause and eat and do things like that. But again, you're not it's just about you being intentional to be with yourself and see what you can find through it.
Well, and I know you found the that whole like rock walk of
I
all
found
the
it, yep,
like the painted
found the rock walk.
rocks and
Yep,
stuff, which was so cool.
yep. Yeah. Yeah, and it forced me to like own my so I've never been a fan of my middle name. To own my middle name. I put a post up about it, but I think it was the thing where I told my wife, I came to an epiphany, like, closer to the end of the walk was like this idea though that, I think I had shame in the just because as a kid growing up, like I said, that thing earlier of like, it's all high schoolitis in a sense, right? You wish your middle name was like John or something like that. And so, but I didn't have that. And so but today it's just who I am. And so, yeah. So, I mean, my middle name's Marabo and it's from my grandpa who came from Norway. And so, yeah, yeah.
It's it's fascinating to me how little time we actually spend with ourselves, despite spending all day with ourselves.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because like you said earlier, I think it's the phones.
Yeah. Well,
That,
and look, I'm not passing judgment on anybody. I still spend too much time on my phone to begin with, and there's millions of dollars and super smart researchers that go into, pulling down on the Facebook to refresh the feed like it's a slot
yeah,
machine and the
yeah,
colors and the notification. Like there's just it's an uphill battle sometimes.
yeah, yeah,
But I don't know that like the obituary or the retirement. I don't know that any of us would sit there in those things and say like, being on Facebook for 2 to 3 hours a day on my phone is something that I want to do long term.
yeah.
Yet in the short term, like it's so addictive. Maybe that is the best
Yeah, no,
term.
I agree. And I'm like, I put a post up the other day too about like, have you ever like just watched your entire day go by watching Beat Bobby Flay? Because it's the same type of a feel because it's this repeat show. It's a canned show. But good Lord, and they'll play like 20 hours of it in a row, but it's almost like that type of a feel where you're just like, where the hell did my day just go? And so, yeah, that's fascinating. And so, but sometimes you need that.
Well, but so like that's my question. Sometimes we need that. Like while we are living in the moment, how do you incorporate rest, relaxation, quiet? I know you mentioned like me, your brain runs all the time. Like,
Oh,
what are you doing to have the more quieter, slower moments?
yeah, so again, a lot of that it happens at the gym, but the general fun side of it, where I'm focused on other stuff and not thinking about like the work and the future of where we're going and the next quarter or what have you. I mean, I play video games almost nightly, and literally in order to do that, I think you have to be focused on that thing. You're not actually focused on other stuff for that period of time, and
So
so
finding a hobby.
yeah, I think you have to. You need to find something, whatever it may be, that brings you joy. And again, I think maybe, and it's the thing within the hustle culture where people have to, and we talk a lot about this within the team, is high achievers, you've got to give yourself a little bit of grace. And you stepping back and me stepping back to play Fortnite for, an hour or two is not the end of the world. And it may in the long run actually be a good thing because then it gets me out of my head for a while and can just go out into another world and do some other stuff.
Well,
So,
and I don't know if this is in support of what you're saying or undermining it, but how often, like in the middle of a Fortnite game, are you just like, oh my God, that's the solution to
oh, that
that
you found the
problem that's
idea.
been.
I'll say what's interesting about it is so I play with my brother and his son, and so it's a thing too where my brother is a couple years younger, but it's good to like bounce ideas from a fresh perspective sometimes because
Gotcha.
it's our newer version of a phone call these days
Yeah.
in that sense. And so I do think, but that aha moment can come, and he's given me, and even I've had some moments too where it's just like a little bit of clarity will come because you've stepped away, right? They've always talked about that idea of like, if you're stuck in a moment, to walk away and go for a walk or go paint something or go do something to like work the other side of the brain. So that way you can like wake yourself up a little bit.
Well, and I hate multitasking. Like,
Me too.
and I don't know that at this point nothing supports multitasking,
I
but I
agree.
love multi-impact. And
Right.
so like here you're talking about, you're spending time with your brother, you've got it like the phone call, you've got somebody to bounce ideas off of, you're playing a game you enjoy. So
Yep.
like it's amazing to me the people that are like, "Oh, I need more cases and I don't have a hobby." Great. Like ask your referral sources. Like, what do you do? What are your
Yeah.
hobbies? How can I
Yeah.
join you? Like let's go play
Yeah.
pickleball together and maybe you get more cases and maybe you get to play it. Like finding that multi-impact, use what you already have going for you to take that next step, even if it's downtime, even if it's video games, even if it's finding a hobby, even if it's,
Yeah.
getting to the gym, reaching out to
Yeah.
people and saying like who would work out with you here and there.
Right. Right. And isn't it the idea too, then again, we go back to the thing we talked about earlier of like just we're humans who want to, and in that situation, want to just get together and connect with other humans. Because I mean, we look at, I think too soon, we probably look at what can I get out of this referral source? But maybe it's actually just why can't I connect with this person because I actually just like them as, they interest me and maybe they're just good people. I want nothing from you,
Well,
and if,
and how much better, like if when you feel that way, I think
yeah.
you get more out of it
Oh,
because you're
absolutely.
not trying to get stuff out of it.
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree. Yeah, there's no like backdoor type of a motive or anything like that you're trying to get out of it. Yeah,
Because I think all of us know people who are, and there's that like weird part in your gut where you're like, this person's only hanging out with me for X reason,
yeah,
instead of
yeah.
being like, no, I genuinely want to spend more time with this person, and
Right.
bonus points, we can share clients and
Yeah,
whatnot from there.
yeah. I think it's a gut check, right? Like you just feel it, like in your gut a little bit, and you just kind of know. And it's the I think I heard a Vaynerchuk thing the other day where he was talking about that. Like, don't. He's like, I would not ever want to give up my gut instinct over anything else.
Mm.
And so I thought it was a fascinating thing. Like sometimes you just, you can feel it.
Well, and I think the more you're living in the moment, the more that gut feeling impacts you. Because
Yeah,
if you're distracting yourself from that weird internal hesitation versus turning into it
yeah.
by being present.
Well, and the other thing too, so and I talked to the team about this, but I've thought about it a lot too, is this idea of as we then go to make decisions, right? That as and we move from one thing to another, or this decision would impact X. So in this moment, I make this decision, right? So I made a decision a while back to be on this call and do this recording. And so a lot of people would say, well, was it the right decision or the wrong decision? And maybe there's actually the third way to look at it. It's just a decision. And there's no right or wrong with the way that we look at things. And they're just a decision. So whatever now the outcome is, it's okay, we'll deal with it. Because I can't predict that future outcome. So because in our head, right, we've already got the prediction figured out. We already know what we believe is going to, but it never happens that way. And a lot of times we'll go to worst case scenario. And it was there's a lady, she has a podcast, she's a former Harvard attorney who's become a thought podcaster that my wife listens to. But she talks about the idea when we go to that worst case scenario in our head and we think, right decision, wrong decision. She then says, well, she's like, the problem is people actually don't go far enough. So you don't take your worst case scenario all the way to the end. She's like, keep going. So if I said, well, I got on this today and Jordan's going to end up saying, well, he hates my guts. Okay, great. She's like, but then keep going. Take it further. She's like, go all the way to the end. So somehow you take it all the way to the end of like, you're going to, I'm going to be living under a bridge. Once Jordan said he hates my guts, I'm going to end up living under a bridge and my wife's going to divorce me. My kids will never talk to me. They're all the way to the end. And then your subconscious goes, that's BS. That's never going to happen. And she's like, exactly. So now you know that worst case isn't actually going to happen that way because you took it all the way. You took it further.
Right. You went so crazy with it that it,
And then now you have to flip it and go, but what if it did work? So what if this was just a great experience? And now force your brain to start thinking about it that way too. Or what if it just is? What if this is just a great conversation, period? And so that's the thing of the right decision, wrong decision, or just a decision. And a lot of times we put a lot of weight on these and just go, but let's just see what happens.
You ever read Gift of Fear by Gavin De Becker?
I've got it. I don't think I've read it.
He
Uh,
has the same thing that she said he talks about from fear. Like, you're not afraid of somebody breaking your house. You're afraid that they
uh,
will do that and then point a gun at you. But you're not afraid of that. You're afraid that they'll shoot you. But you're not afraid of that. You're afraid that you'll die. But you're not afraid of that. And like,
exactly.
and it was the way that he frames it. I'm just like, oh, like there's no reason to be afraid in the now,
Right.
actually.
Yeah.
You're afraid about the next second, but like the
Right.
now is the now.
Right.
Um, wild
Yeah.
connections.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's just that thing of like forcing yourself, but also just forcing others around you. Like whenever they get into those states of going, I'm afraid I'm going to make the wrong choice. Well, let's talk about that. What does that look like? And then you push them out of, make them go further.
Well, and how few choices are undoable.
Exactly. Exactly. Because it's even like, I'm sure you've had team members or what have you that have been like, oh my gosh, I screwed this up so bad. And you're just like, it's okay, calm down. Like we've had a
Statute
mantra.
of limitations.
Yeah,
That's
exactly. Exactly.
other than that,
That's the
like
one. Yes.
file
Yeah.
a motion to undo the file a strike your own
Yeah.
pleading, fix
Yes.
it,
Yep.
send an email, make a phone call. Yeah.
Be okay.
Like
Yeah.
that's the one thing in
It's
bright
the
red.
I tell most of them too. I'm just like, look, what we do day in and day out, we're not curing cancer. I'm not solving like the water crisis in Africa or anything like that. We're helping people and we're doing it to the best of our ability right now. We can always get better. So let's keep doing that.
Well, and from the like what you talked about a little bit a while ago in terms of like the right outcome, the wrong outcome. And so you were talking about it's not a good decision or a bad decision, it's a
Yeah.
decision. But as lawyers, like in an adversarial profession, a lot of times we get caught up on, oh, the verdict was X, so I did the right things, or vice versa. And those things are related, but not necessarily 100% correlated.
So that is fascinating you say that because the trial that we were just in, we did not get the result we wanted. And so talking to my 26-year-old daughter, it was her first trial. And we talked about that a lot. And she did not. What's great is she has enough perspective to understand the workup that she did and the team did. Actually, it was not defined by the outcome. She was still very, very happy. And she's like, we can learn lessons here
Hmm.
from what we could do better or how we can do things differently. But ultimately, she goes, no, I'm really proud with how we did everything. And so I do think that that is the thing is that we really, really push on the outcome and we discredit based on that outcome or give extra credit based on the outcome that of what the work that we had put into it,
Well,
especially a cutthroat
and
environment. Yeah.
good for your daughter at 26. At 36 plus, I struggle with that still to this day.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a thing, and her and I have talked about it a bit, but it's who was it? Elise had told me about Cy Wakeman's no ego. And it's
Hmm.
the thing within the profession is there is a ton of ego. And ego can be a great thing at times, but it can also be a really, really big detriment. And I think that the more that we can shift off of ego and move towards team and again move towards lifting each other, like we can all do better together and within our teams and within our groups. Because if I have to move to the front of the line to be like, look at me, here's this, look at what I did, and it just there's something else going on that needs to be fed instead of it just being about the bigger purpose or the bigger mission going on.
Well, and I think actually, let me flip this. So, you know the story of Joseph Heller and Kurt Vonnegut at the dinner party?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so Kurt Vonnegut, Joseph Heller, authors, Catch 22, Breakfast of Champions, Cat's Cradle. They're at this dinner party for some, I don't remember, a financial investor, something like that. And Kurt Vonnegut says to Joseph Heller, like, how do you feel knowing that a lifetime of selling Catch 22 will make you like less money than this guy makes in an hour? And Joseph Heller says, well, I know something he doesn't know. And Kurt Vonnegut says, what's that? He goes, enough, like what enough is.
Yeah. Oh
And
my gosh. Yes.
and I love this story. It's so, and I can only imagine like the two of those guys
Uh,
being way more, how they actually said it, I'm sure is way more engaging than
sure.
you tell the story. But I think this goes back to what you're talking about from like the ego standpoint. Like if we know what enough looks like, it's easier for us to be happy on the journey instead of always looking for more, instead of having to win every trial, instead of building our ego, building our ego, building our ego to no end, like
Yeah.
this becomes super important.
Yeah, and I think who is it? It's have you read Wilkinson's book, Never Enough?
I don't
Andrew,
think so.
I'd highly recommend
No.
it. So he's a billion.
Okay.
He ends up meeting with Charlie Munger at one point. Him and his partner do. It's a great, easy read. Andrew's a fascinating, really introspective person at this point, and so his whole book is prefaced around at first, never enough, and basically, as he goes through the journey, he figures out what is truly enough, and how it shapes him. But it's a fascinating, I listen to it, but because he reads it on his own audio, but completely makes sense. And I do agree because once you have enough, and again, your enough can raise. Because here's the thing, Jordan. I mean, I like nice stuff. I really, really do. I like
Sure.
flying a certain way. I like nice cars, everything else. But once you have enough, then I think it's that thing of like things can actually, you're kind of just you're breathing for a minute. You're just letting all that stuff that you're carrying around go. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, you can just relax.
So, and just for anybody else, the reason I had hesitation, and because I had to Google this, so I read Never Enough by Jennifer Wallace, which is
Oh,
that concept in academia. But when you were explaining the second part, I was like, the name sounds familiar, but not. So so this is the Never Enough by Andrew Wilkinson.
yes.
Although really, they're probably about the same thing, just one's academic achievement and
Yep.
one's money.
Yeah. Yep.
Too funny. All right. Well, so speaking of never enough from a money standpoint, that's actually what our newsletter this week is. So you all are watching this on a Tuesday. This Wednesday, Money, It's a Gas, the Pink Floyd, how to basically fund an ideal life. So coming up with that enough and figuring it out. So thank you for queuing up some of my segues for the stuff that I have to talk about.
Yeah, and
Uh,
even with something like that, I would actually suggest getting on to who is it, Paul Millard. He wrote The Pathless Path. His newsletter, he does a weekly newsletter as well. He talks about, so even on that journey on how do we fund the ideal life,
yeah.
because his is pretty minimalistic, right? But he's traveled around, and so it's defining that. But he has some pretty good conversations within his stuff on it's
Awesome.
pretty interesting. So The Pathless Path is a really good read.
Well, and I think the more that we are creating our own path,
Right.
figuring out our own journey, figuring out our own end goal, the happier we are.
Yeah.
And I think that all goes back to living in the moment, to be you, to be with you, to be intentional about what's going on helps you
Yeah.
get to where you want to go.
Yeah. And it's I think over anything too, it's just finding your people that you want to be around, choose, figuring out who your circle is, and then just enjoying those, being intentional about the things that you set up. You have to be intentional, don't you think, too, a little bit about just actually having fun. Be intentional about, there can be, what is it? It's like planned spontaneity in a sense, is like
Yes.
this idea of like, so back in the day when we were kids, we just go outside and crazy stuff would happen. Well, these days we have all these other things happening. So we almost have to like have planned moments of spontaneity. But it can be super enjoyable. And those are the things, again, it's pretty simplistic, but man, it can be the best things ever.
Well, and I mean, we could do a whole thing on this. Like I always tell people, you're planning 80% so that
Yeah.
you have the override buffer, but so that you have the opportunity to drop everything and go get a drink with friends because
Oh,
you've got buffer time built in.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think snapping yourself back to the time is now, the place is here
Yep.
becomes so essential because that's all that you can control is you right now.
Yeah, it's the what is it? Who is it? It's what's his face from Lion King, where he hits Mufasa in the head.
Oh, Rafiki?
Yeah, and where Rafiki's like, and then he hits him in the head, and he's like, "How did that hurt?" And he's like, "It's in the past," and that's just it. It's like, so we've got the stuff in the past. We can't figure out yet what's going to happen in the future because it's not here yet. So it is that idea of just definitely just trying to stay here is the thing right now. And so, yeah, and it's as you kind of do this, I think you start figuring out too, because you're not worrying about the things from the past. You're not really trying to dictate or control the things of the future and just letting those pieces go, and whatever that outcome will be, it'll be. And then I think it frees you up a little bit just to have a really enjoyable life. And,
I love it.
because I mean, we've all seen people that are crazy stressed or super angry or whatever it may be. But it's in those moments where you can just just let it go. I mean, they've got the and in Peaceful Warrior, there's a line too where somebody gets like pretty angry in the book, and then he's like, look, feel your feelings. He's like, let it flow through you, but then let it go. You've got to feel it in the moment right now, but now we've got to let it go. So it's let it flow and let it go. And then ultimately, once you let it go, it's like, okay, it's in the past. We got to move on.
So for people that have been listening for the last 50 something minutes and want more of that in their life, want more of you in their life, want more of that insight, what's the best way for them to stay in touch so that we can help more people
Yeah.
live in the now and be present in the here?
Yeah. You can find me on TikTok at CN the Law, Instagram at Christopher Nicolaysen. You can call me if you ever just want to chat or talk. I'll give you my cell at 719-291-6346. That's going to be the easiest way to get a hold of me.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for being with us today, Chris. Thank you to everybody who watched and listened to this. We'll see you back here next week. We've got Anna Juneja coming in. Anna has a really great online persona, but from a really, truly authentic way. And so I'm really interested to talk with her about how we can be ourselves truly and louder to have the impact that we're looking for in life. So until then, please, please, please take nothing away from this. The time is now and the place is here is such a good takeaway. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, George.